All right, by a vote of 36-2, I now recognize the Honorable Chair Matthew Springer. If you will please come forward to conduct the remainder of the meeting.
Y'all give me one moment to... Okay, thank you so much. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first start by saying thank you. It was my distinguished honor to receive your support to serve as the presiding officer of this historic delegation. As chairman of the Electoral College, the next order of business will be the election of the secretary of the meeting for the presidential electors. The floor is now open for nominations for secretary of the meeting. Do I hear any nominations?
Chairman Stringer, I'm Sean O'Brien from CD 15. I move that Naomi Narvaez from CD 35 be nominated as secretary of the meeting.
Naomi Narvaez has been nominated as secretary of the meeting. Is there a second? Please come down to the podium.
Chairman Stringer, Michael Sabat, CD6. I move to second the nomination of Naomi Narvaez of CD35 as secretary.
The name of Naomi Narvaez has been seconded for the position of secretary of the Electoral College. Are there any other nominations for the position of secretary? Hearing none, is there a motion to close nominations for the position of secretary of this meeting?
Marcia Daughtry, Congressional District 1. I move that we close the nominations for secretary of the Credentials Committee.
It's so been moved to close nominations. Do I hear a second to close the nominations for secretary?
Mr. Chairman, Tex Hall, CD 21, the reddest district in the state. I second that we close the nominations.
Is there any objection from the body to declare the position of secretary of the Electoral College as having been established as Naomi Narvaez? Hearing none, Naomi Narvaez is hereby declared the secretary of the meeting. Would you please come down and assist? As chairman, we will now proceed to the balloting portion of this meeting. Ballots will be distributed for the office of President and Vice President of the United States, and I will hand these over to the secretary here. We will be voting by secret ballot for President of the United States. The instructions are as follows. Please mark your ballot, fold it, and deposit it in the ballot box as it is presented to you by the Secretary of State staff. The staff will distribute the ballots momentarily. It is my honor to report to you that we have finished tallying the votes for the presidential electors of the state of Texas, and the vote totals are as follows. All 38 votes for President Donald J. Trump for President of the United States of America. As chairman, I announce that we will now continue with the balloting for the office of President of the United States of America, and will release the official ballots to the staff of the Office of the Secretary of State for distribution and marking. After tallying the votes for the office of President of the United States of America, I'm honored to report that all Texas's 38 presidential electors of the Electoral College have cast their ballots for the Honorable Michael R. Pence for Vice President of the United States. Proceeding to the next order of business, as required by the United States Constitution, we must prepare 6 certificates of vote. This document requires each elector's signature. The certificates will now be distributed to you by the Secretary of State's staff. Please be certain to sign above your typed name. You will sign a total of 6 certificates. As we begin to sign the certificates, Mr. Brendan Anthony will perform America the Beautiful. Thank you. Electors, just to let you know, it'll be a few minutes. It takes a little bit of time, according to the Secretary of State's staff, to prepare the certificates of ascertainment. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow electors, I have received all 6 certificates of vote. I will now ask the Secretary to attach 1 certificate of vote to each certificate of ascertainment and place the appropriate envelopes which have been prepared by the Secretary of State's staff. These envelopes will be properly distributed following the adjournment of this meeting. The Secretary will place a certificate of vote and certificate of in each of the designated envelopes, and this process should take a couple of more minutes. The meeting will come back to order. If the electors will please take their seats. I'm pleased to announce that the certificates of ascertainment have been completed. Thus concludes that portion of the meeting. The chair now announces that we will now move to the next portion, which is miscellaneous business. Do any electors have any miscellaneous business? Would the elector please come down, state your name, congressional district, and the nature of your motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members, if I can get my notes out. Mark Ramsey, Congressional District 10. Having copies handed out of a resolution that I am proposing. It's based on something that the SREC did on Saturday. On Saturday, if you haven't heard, the SREC passed a resolution overwhelmingly to basically complain about the Supreme Court decision regarding the Texas case before them. And it had some other language that encouraged the other state legislators to try to fix the problem of the 4 states that were identified. I took this resolution from SREC and I modified it to incorporate unique aspects of the Electoral College. It is patterned after the one that passed already overwhelmingly and received very good response from people across the state. And I'll read it to you now. There are copies being passed out. It's entitled, "Defending the Integrity of Our Constitution, Our Elections, and These United States. Whereas the members of the Presidential Electoral College from Texas condemned the moral cowardice of the United States Supreme Court in failing to accept the original jurisdiction of a suit by one state against another, which is expressly allowed by the United States Constitution in Article 3, Section 2. And whereas the United States Supreme Court ruled that it would not hear the case because the state of Texas lacked standing, and whereas as members of the Electoral College, we clearly have standing, and whereas the Supreme Court did not rule on the merits of the arguments, and whereas the Supreme Court refused its responsibility to hear a case under Article 3, Section 2 of the United States Constitution, and whereas neither Texas nor any state should accept a clearly unconstitutional process that, if left unchallenged, will harm its citizens' lives, liberty, property, and will itself set a precedent for future usurpations. And whereas respect for our Constitution requires that all attempts to usurp it and its specifically designated powers by any means, governors or otherwise, should never be permitted, in this case relating to the appointment of electors, quote, in such a manner as the legislature thereof may direct, unquote, from the U.S. Constitution, Article 2, Section 1. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of the Presidential Electoral College from Texas call on the state legislatures of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Michigan to convene and appoint their electors in accordance with the true constitutional vote of the people, or if undeterminable, by appointing their electors directly. And be it further resolved that in the event of a failure of the 4 legislatures to act as the above, that the congressional delegations of those states object to those 4 states' unconstitutionally appointed electors when publicly read January 6th. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be sent to each member of the United States Supreme Court, President Donald J. Trump, and Vice President Mike Pence, the Governor and Lieutenant Governor of Texas, and the Speaker of the legislative bodies of each respective state. Members, Mr. Chairman, I move adoption.
Elector Ramsey has moved adoption. Is there a second on the motion? Would you? One moment. One moment. We have to have a second first for objections.
CD 24, I second this motion.
Please state your name, congressional district, and your objection.
Mr. Chairman, Jim Pickle, Congressional District 3. I'm in favor of the resolution except for the words at the very beginning, the moral cowardice of. With that stricken from that, I would vote for the approval. Thank you. And I move that those words be stricken from the resolution as amended.
Is there a motion to second the amendment to the resolution? Please state your name, congressional district, and your motion.
My name is Tamon Hamlet, Congressional District 18. I second the motion to the amendment to strike down the words and keep the rest of the proposal.
Is there any discussion on the motion to amend? Please state your name, congressional district, and your position on, for, or against.
Tex Hall, Congressional District 21, speaking for the amendment. I, Don Quixote, come and tilt at this windmill. Kind of catches your attention. If I'd have walked up and said, I, Don Quixote, y'all would have looked at me like my hat was on backwards. Ken Mercer would have probably done backflips and every other educator around, because while those words may have gotten your attention, they didn't get to the heart of the deal.
There's been an objection that the elector needs to maintain his speech on the motion, not on the resolution entirety. Please limit your remarks to the amendment to the resolution. Thank you.
That is correct, sir. So these two small words, moral cowardice, are like this fire ant bite I got the other day. It's little, but it's irritating, and everybody's had one. So when you throw those words out front, yes, you get their attention, but not in the right way. And I say that if anybody here can stand up now and tell Justices Thomas, Kavanaugh, and Coney Barrett that they lack moral courage, you better rethink things. So I stand with the amendment to delete the words moral cowardice from it, and you could even just substitute the word action. Thank you.
Is there any discussion on, for, or against the amendment to the motion?
Mr. Chairman, Matt Patrick, Congressional District 32. Speaking against the amendment, I'd like to leave the words in there. I wish I could give you a specific citation for this, but I didn't make note of it because it was something that I read this morning and I did not know we were going to be presenting this amendment yet. But there's a report available online that talks, it was written by someone who's a current staffer for one of the Supreme Court justices. And this, I'll just describe the report to you that I read, and you can make of it what you will. He said that the justices, as they always do, went into a closed room to discuss cases they're taking or do debate. There's no phones, no computers, no nothing. No one else is in the room except for the 9 justices. It's typically very civil. They usually don't hear any sound. They just debate what they're doing. But when the Texas case was brought up, he said he heard screaming through the walls as Justice Roberts and the other liberal justices were insisting that this case not be taken up. And the reason, the words that were heard through the wall when Justice Thomas and Justice Alito were citing Bush versus Gore from John Roberts were, I don't give up about that case. I don't want to hear about it. At that time, we didn't have riots. So what he was saying was that he was afraid of what would happen if they did the right thing. And I'm sorry, but that is moral cowardice. And we in the SREC, I'm an SREC member, we put those words in very specifically because the charge of the Supreme Court is to ultimately be our final arbitrator, our final line of defense for right and wrong. And they did not do their duty. So I think we should leave these words in because I want to send a strong message to them. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment to the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I raise a point of order against further consideration of the motion on the grounds that this body does not have authority to pass resolutions.
The elector's motion is respectfully overruled by the chair. Is there any other discussion on the amendment to the resolution? Oh, we have one elector coming down, it looks like.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Peyton Inge, CD 26. I think we've been looking across this. I'm going to speak against the amendment. We have been seeing around this country our representatives cower truly because of the violence of the other side. And it's time we call things what they really are. And it was cowardly what they did and a moral irresponsibility. And we shouldn't be afraid to say that. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the motion, on the amendment to the motion? Hearing none, Mr. Ramsey. Yeah. Recognize the amender of the motion to close. Mr. Pickle, it's your motion to amend, correct?
Correct.
Okay, go ahead, close.
Jim Pickle, CD3. Been a constitutional appellate civil rights lawyer for 35 years. Been in front of the United States Supreme Court 9 times. Sending a message like this to a body of legislators or judicial officers is not going to get the attention that you want it to get. Nobody knows what happened in that conference room on purpose. The hearing, yelling, we're not triple hearsay, quadruple hearsay now about what was going on in that room. You cannot make your decision on that basis. You just can't do it. This body, if it passes a resolution, I'm not even sure it can, it needs to be the resolution of this body, not infected by what 5 other people maybe someday someplace said about what was happening at the Supreme Court. We either adopt the words moral cowardice, which are not legal terms, by the way, they're emotional terms, or we take those words out. The decision from the Supreme Court was very short. You can read it. It's 1 page. Just said we reject it because we don't have standing. That's a legal concept. I think there's just a few people in this room that understand what standing is better than I do. It's a standing issue. It's a legal issue. It's not a moral issue. Plus, I think there were a lot of reasons why they did it the way they did it. which might actually be favorable to us. So I would not put inflammatory language in any kind of resolution leaving this room that's going out to a body of judicial or legislative officers across the state, because it makes us look childish, impertinent, and angry. And that is not the signal that the great state of Texas should send. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the motion to amend? Seeing none, we will now move to a vote. If all electors voting for Mr. Pickles' motion to amend, which the motion is to remove the words moral cowardice from the resolution, please raise your hand. And the Secretary staff, please keep them held while the Secretary staff tallies the vote. Would you please keep your hands up while you vote? You may all lower your hands now. The vote is 28 for the motion to amend. Oh, okay. Would all those voting against the motion to amend please raise your hand? You may lower your hands. It appears the vote is 29 for the resolution. 9 against, 1 absent. The motion passes. Mr. Ramsey, you're now recognized to make a motion.
It's kind of lonely up here. Yes, Mr. Chairman, members, this issue had come up in some discussions over the last 24 hours, and there was some language that had been proposed to take out that moral cowardice term. If we simply leave it the way we have just amended it, it simply doesn't read right if we just took out those words. The language that was proposed last night by the other side actually was that it would now read, Texas condemn the lack of action by the United States Supreme Court. So you'd basically be replacing the moral cowardice phrase with the lack of action by.
Are you making the motion?
Yes, so I move that we amend it in that form.
The motion on the table is to clarify the language to read, Texas condemns the lack of action by the United States Supreme Court. Is there a second on that motion? Yes, please.
It was to remove four words, the moral cowardice of, not just moral cowardice. Got to be a paraphrase.
Well, I would still make this.
No, I'm just saying,
Okay.
it does read grammatically okay if you take out those four words.
So the current reading of the resolution is Texas condemns the United States Supreme Court. Is that correct? Correct. And Mr. Ramsey is amending to read as, repeat that again. Mr. Ramsey?
Yes, condemn the lack of action. And we do have copies of the language as.
Is there a second on Mr. Ramsey's motion? Yes, Mr. Hall. State your point of order. Correct, but Mr. Ramsey's motion is to change the wording further. Is there a second on Mr. Ramsey's motion? Would you please state your name and congressional, are you planning a second?
Mr. Chairman, Matt Patrick, Congressional District 32. I second the motion to add the lack of action by, as recommended by Electoral Ramsey.
The motion is seconded. Is there any discussion?
Jim Pickle, CD3. I'm a little bit of a grammar nerd. If you say Texas condemns the lack of action of the United States Supreme Court in failing to accept, that's redundant. In failing to accept is the lack of action by the court. So I don't think this latter amendment is necessary if we leave in the words in failing to accept. Again, it's just a grammatical point.
Is there any other discussion on Mr. Ramsey's motion to amend? Are you withdrawing it? Or are you withdrawing it?
With the permission of the body, that language was actually suggested to me by the other side, but I would gladly withdraw that language so we can get on to passing this.
The amendment's withdrawn. Is there any other discussion? Yes, please state your name.
Sean
and city
O'Brien,
district.
CD 15. I just wanted to clarify because the original wording, the word is condemn, and you said condemns several times when you were repeating the wording, and it's just condemn. So.
Should be an S, I think, actually.
Doesn't have to.
Do you have the reading of okay. With the withdrawal of Mr. Ramsey's motion, we now fall back to the question on the amended version of the resolution from Mr. Pickle's resolution, which states, whereas the members of the Presidential Electoral College from Texas condemn the lack of action by the United States Supreme Court. Perfect. Singular, condemn. Correct. Thank you. The chair now recognizes Mr. Ramsey to close on his resolution. Is there any other discussion? Yes, Mr. Bruegel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. There's something to be said for doing the right thing.
Please state your name and congressional district.
David Bruegel, Congressional District 19. In my view, there's something to be said for doing the right thing in the right venue. I find nothing in the United States Constitution or in state statute that authorizes us to take this action. So I'm going to encourage every member to vote no on this, not on the basis of the resolution itself, but acting under our proper constitutional authority. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the amended resolution? Hearing none, the chair now recognizes Mr. Ramsey to close on his resolution.
Members, Madam Secretary, and Mr. Chairman, we have already honorably completed our statutory requirements, but we remain until adjournment a deliberative body. Deliberative bodies can go almost anywhere they want to go, provided there's not some prohibition against it. There is no prohibition against this badly needed resolution. America has been termed a shining light on a hill. When other countries have faced massive election fraud, the end result, more often than not, is a collapse of their rights, a collapse of their government, a collapse of their economies, and an inevitable slide toward tyranny. We can again be that shining light and show the world not to take this destructive pathway. About an hour or so ago, we took an oath, each and every one of us, to defend the Constitution. We have finished our statutory duties. But before we adjourn, this is one more thing we can and should do. Members, Madam Secretary, Mr. Chairman, I move adoption. Thank you.
The gentleman moves adoption. We'll now move to a vote. Those all in favor of the resolution as amended, please signify by raising your hand and allow for the Secretary of State staff to tally the vote. Show the chair voting aye. You may lower your hands. All those voting against, please raise your hand. You may lower your hands. The vote being 34 electors for, 4 against, the resolution passes. Is there any other business? Hearing none. Hold on one moment. Well, somebody absconded with my itinerary. Do you have the chart? Oh, there it is. Hearing none, we have a couple of announcements. The Secretary and I will be available after the conclusion of our meetings if you have any questions. The Secretary of State staff is also available after the meeting to assist with any questions you may have related to your travel expenses and allowable reimbursements. I would now like to ask the Reverend Gregory Davidson to come lead us in our benediction. If you would all rise.
Our constitutional republic works sometimes in mysterious and very solemn ways. This has been one of those solemn ways. I've been asked to give a benediction, and I want to affirm to you that this is not a prayer, but this is a benediction. Benediction is actually from Latin. It's 2 words put together, one meaning bene, which is good, and diction, meaning to speak. So benediction is a good word. And so what I want to send you out with is a good word. Hopefully it's a word that you could use this week and beyond. The word that I want to send you off with is balance. Balance. We hear today so much about diversity. We talk about diversity of thought, diversity of race, diversity of lifestyle, diversity of politics, diversity of everything. Is it any wonder why, with this emphasis on diversity, we don't have unity? The ancient book of Judges speaks of diversity in the days when everyone said everyone did what was right in their own eyes, and that is the ultimate of diversity. The results were not pretty. You see, the balance is somewhere between unity and diversity, and it's not one that can easily be resolved. The ancient philosopher Socrates had this problem. He felt like it was in the best interest of the constitutional state to have everybody united. Aristotle was the opposite way. He felt like there needed to be diversity to hold the city-state together. So you see, this issue of unity and diversity won't be solved here today, but I do want to offer perhaps a way forward. Dr. Barry Corey, who is the president of Biola University, sees it this way. He says we should have firm centers, but soft edges. Firm centers, but soft edges. By that, Dr. Corey means we should hold dearly to those things that are at our core, those principles that we will fight to the death for. But on the other hand, Dr. Corey says we should have soft edges. It's these soft edges that give us balance to keep us humble. The soft edges that allow us to love one another as we do ourselves. So in other words, soft edges allow us to share the good news that each of us has in our firm center. Firm centers, soft edges. So this week, and perhaps beyond, I send you out with the word balance. Celebrate our differences. Hold high those things that we have in common, but hold tight to that center. Do not compromise, but love one another. So I send you out this week with this benediction. Love one another and seek balance in all that you do. May God guide your steps, And now go in peace. Go.
Thank you, Reverend. Guess what time it is? Do I hear a motion to adjourn today's? Do I hear a second? All in favor of adjourning, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Ladies and gentlemen of the Electoral College, it has been my absolute distinguished honor serving you today. Thank you so much for the privilege of serving you. We are adjourned.
Electoral College is formed every 4 years for the sole purpose of formally electing President and Vice President of the United States of America as required by the Constitution of the United States of America. We welcome you to the chambers of the California State Assembly in the California State Capitol for this purpose. I would personally like to thank California Assembly Speaker Anthony Rendon for designating me to convene our historic proceedings today. I would also like to acknowledge the staff here in the California State Assembly, as well as the Democratic Party, for making all the necessary arrangements to make today's session a success and compliant with constitutional requirement, as well as our Sergeant at Arms for ensuring a smooth session today. We too would like to welcome the viewers of KCRA TV here in Sacramento, as well as viewers of C-SPAN and other media outlets from across the country who are following these proceedings today. California, the most populous state in these United States, will be formally casting its votes for the winner of our state's popular vote, Joseph R. Biden, and vice presidential running mate, California's own Kamala Harris. Today's proceeding in this chamber has added historical significance, as it is expected that when California's 55 electoral votes are cast, Joseph R. Biden will have properly secured more than the requisite 270 electoral votes to formally be elected President of the United States of America. We ask at this time that our elector designates and staff in the chamber please stand and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Tate Williams, you are recognized for the pledge. Ms. Williams.
Please place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. The first order of business is the roll call of the electors. As this unfolds, please remain standing as you hear your name called and until the names of all 55 electors have been called. The clerk will call the roll.
Brian Sulecki, Thomas McInerney, Elizabeth Can, Kara Betchel, Mary Bowker, Ann Sanger, Janine Barra, Catherine Bancroft, Jillian McNerney, Donna Kirkvalit Varin, Jane Pandell, Maddie Scott, Lanice Jones, Paul McCloskey, Freddie Davis, Marcia Conant, Amy Rao, David Kennedy, Catherine Wilkinson, Vincent Kohler, Stephen Dybert, Patty Cabuletti, Brock Neely, Madeline Handy, Brandon Zavala, Franklin Lima, Naomi Tomita, Wallace Knox, Ronald Herrera, William Prady, Christina Marquez, Andre Quintero, Jahi Hua, Mark Gonzalez, Robert Torres, Augustine Areola, Yolanda Parker, Catherine Ward, Jackie Cisneros, Betty Monroy, Suzanne Singer, Brandon Benjamin, Karen Walters, Emily Dredd, Fink, Nalita Mendoza, Alex Norman, Aaron Sturdivant, Kevin Sabalico, Peter Boland, Shirley Weber, Janice Brown, Brian Fletcher, Rosalind Wyman, Tate Williams.
I will be administering the oath of office simultaneously to all elector designates. May I ask all electors to raise their right hands for the oath of office of elector for President and Vice President of the United States of America. For the office of elector for President and Vice President of the United States of America, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you are about to enter? If so, please affirm your oath by stating, "I do." Congratulations, you may be seated. There is an oath distributed at your desks that is to be signed where indicated. We will now move to nominations for the office of Chairperson of California's Electoral College for the selection of President and Vice President of the United States. The nominations are now open. Mark Gonzalez of Congressional District 34 is recognized for the purpose of nomination. Mr. Gonzalez.
Good afternoon, electors and friends. My name is Mark Gonzalez, and I proudly represent the 34th Congressional District, and I am pleased to nominate Assemblymember Shirley Weber as chairperson for California's Electoral College 2020.
This nomination requires a second. Kevin Sabelico of CD 49 is recognized to second the nomination of Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Sabelico.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am Kevin Sabelico of Congressional District 49, and I second the nomination of Assemblymember Shirley Weber as chairperson for California's Electoral College for 2020.
Are there any further nominations for the office of chair of the Electoral College of 2020? Seeing and hearing none, nominations for the office of chair of the Electoral College of 2020 are now closed. We will move to a voice vote to elect the chair of the Electoral College. Is there any objection to a voice vote? Seeing and hearing no objections, all in favor of electing Assemblymember Shirley Weber as the chairperson of the Electoral College, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Assemblymember Shirley Weber, congratulations. You are elected chairperson of the California Electoral College for the selection of the President and Vice President of the United States of America. Please come to the rostrum. Electors and guests, I am pleased to present to you the chairperson of the California Electoral College for the selection of the President and Vice President of the United States for 2020, Assemblymember and my great colleague, Shirley Weber.
Thank you, Assemblymember Mullen, and thanks to all of you who are electors for having selected me as chair of the Electoral College. I think all of us realize just how significant this experience is. Most of you, like me, read about it when you were a kid in school. Never knew what the Electoral College was. Thought it was some building somewhere that maybe people went to school in. But we learned over time that this is an important part of our Constitution. It's an important part of our process, the orderly process of the transference of power. But it's also a part of our representation, making sure that every person who votes in California, who votes in this nation, have the right to have their vote count and to be represented by the Electoral College. If you've traveled around the world, you have seen the tragedies that occur when you don't have an orderly transference of power. And we are proud of the fact that in this nation, we have always had an orderly transference of power. And despite what we may think we see outside, it is here today. And that is what we're doing, representing the people of California. So I'm honored that you've asked me to chair this. as a child who's the parents of sharecroppers whose grandparents never got a chance to vote in Hope, Arkansas, I am sure they're beaming down realizing that their daughter, their granddaughter, is an elector. But not only just an elector, but the chair of the college that is going to complete the business we began on November 3rd. So once again, thank you so very much for your faith and confidence and participation in this process. As we begin, there are 6 electors that are unable to be here today. And to fill those vacancies, we have a nomination, a vote, and an administration of the oath of office. Without objection, I'm requesting the unanimous consent to fill all of the vacancies at one time. This motion requires a second, and so therefore I'm asking for the motion to basically nominate those individuals who are here. The nominations are open for replacement of electors to fill the vacancies for these several congressional districts and Senate vacancies that we see. CD 21, CD 37, CD 47, CD 28 and 38, and the Senate seat for Senator Feinstein needs to be filled. There are 6 vacancies. Is there a motion on the floor? Okay, yes. Ms. Scott?
Madam Chair, I am Maddie Scott, and I nominate Joseph Cox, Rusty Hicks, Joy Atkinson, Yvette Martinez, John Casey, and Darrell Steinberg to fill the vacancies for congressional districts 21, 28, 37, 38, 47, and 1 Senate appointment.
There's a request for a second. Ms. Jahihu?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Jihi Ha, and I second the nomination of the replacement electors Joseph Cox, Rusty Hicks, Joy Atkinson, Yvette Martinez, John Casey, and Darrell Steinberg to fill the vacancies for the congressional districts CD 21, 28, 37, 38, 47, and the 1 Senate appointment. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further nominations? Hearing and seeing none, the nominations for replacement electors are now closed. We will take a voice vote on the appointment of replacement electors to fill the vacancies. Is there an objection to a voice vote? Seeing no objections, all those in favor of appointing Joseph Patrick Cox, Rusty Hicks, Joy Atkinson, Yvette Martinez, John Casey, and Darrell Steinberg to fill the vacancies being specified by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and therefore Joseph Patrick Cox, Rusty Hicks, Joy Atkinson, Yvette Martinez, John Casey, and Darrell Steinberg are appointed to fill the vacancies. The electors designated now should stand at their desk, and Assemblymember Mullins will now administer the oath of office.
Thank you, sir.
For the office of elector for President and Vice President of the United States of America, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you are about to enter? If so, please affirm your oath by stating, I do. I do. Congratulations.
Congratulations, and thank you for accepting that responsibility. You may be seated as you have, and a copy of the oath is on your desk. Please sign and print your name where indicated and leave it on your desk. Thank you so much. I'm appointing 9 tellers for California's Electoral College for 2020. They are seated throughout the chamber, and so congratulations to those of you on your designation as a teller. We will now undertake the important task of voting on behalf of the Californians for President of the United States. Electors, you will find a blue ballot for President on your desk. Please sign the ballot where indicated.
No, that's not true.
We have, you need to hold up on it for just a second. We're going to do that. We're going to collect those ballots. But we also have to select a secretary at this time. It's not in here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and ask the tellers to collect the ballots. And once we have collected the ballots, to hold the ballots while we select a secretary.
Assemblymember Weber?
Yes.
My name is Mark Gonzalez. I'm proudly representing the 34th Congressional District, and I nominate Franklin Lima as Secretary of California's Electoral College 2020.
Is there a second to the nomination of Secretary?
Madam Chair, I am Kevin Sabelico of CD 49, and I second the nomination of Franklin Lima as Secretary of California's Electoral College for 2020.
Are there any additional nominations for Secretary? Hearing and seeing none, we will now take a voice vote. Is there any objection to doing a voice vote? Seeing no objection to that, we will now vote for Mr. Lima for Secretary. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Congratulations, Mr. Lima. You are now Secretary of the Electoral College. Please collect the ballots, teller, and bring them to Mr. Lima. Thank you, Secretary Lima. I will now announce the tally of the vote for the office of President of the United States. For Joseph R. Biden of Delaware, a Democrat, ayes 55, noes 0. Now we will undertake the vote for Vice President of the United States. Electors, you will find the red ballot for Vice President on your desk. Please sign the ballot where indicated. Tellers, please collect the ballots.